The morning Nathan Grayson found the orc woman collapsed in his wheat field, he thought she was dead. He had been walking the property line of his modest farm, checking for damage from the previous night's storm, when he spotted the massive form sprawled face down among the trampled stalks. His first instinct was to run back to the house for his father's old hunting bow, but something stopped him. The figure wasn't moving, and as he crept closer, he could see the dark stains of blood soaking into the earth beneath her. Nathan was 22 years old and had lived his entire life on the frontier, where orcs were spoken of in hushed, fearful tones. They raided human settlements, the stories went. They were savage, brutal, incapable of mercy. But looking at this woman now, broken and bleeding in his field, all he could see was someone who needed help. He approached cautiously, his heart hammering against his ribs. She was young, perhaps close to his own age, with deep green skin that had gone pale around her lips. Her leather armor was torn in several places, revealing deep gashes across her ribs and shoulder. One of her small tusks was chipped, and her pointed ears were pressed flat against her skull. She wasn't breathing regularly, just taking shallow, rattling gasps that made Nathan's chest tighten with concern. "Can you hear me?" he asked, kneeling beside her despite every survival instinct screaming at him to keep his distance. Her eyes flickered open, revealing irises the color of amber. They focused on him with difficulty, hazy with pain and blood loss. She tried to speak, but only managed a weak sound that might have been a word in her own language. "I'm going to help you," Nathan said, though he had no idea if she could understand him. "I need to get you inside. This is going to hurt." He was not a large man, lean and wiry from farm work rather than bulky with muscle, and she was tall even lying down. It took him 3 attempts to get her arm over his shoulder and lift her to a half-standing position. She cried out when her weight settled on her injured leg, and he felt her body go rigid with agony. Together they stumbled toward his small house, her blood leaving a trail through the wheat. Nathan's home was simple, just 3 rooms his grandfather had built when first claiming this land. He managed to get the orc woman onto his own bed, which immediately seemed too small for her powerful frame. She had passed out again during the journey, which Nathan supposed was a mercy given what he needed to do next. He had learned basic field medicine from his mother before she died, back when he was just a boy. She had been the closest thing to a healer their isolated community had, and she had insisted he learn to set bones and stitch wounds. Nathan had never imagined he would be using those skills on an orc. He heated water over his fire and gathered clean cloth, thread, and the bottle of strong whiskey he kept for special occasions. The armor had to come off first, which required cutting through leather straps with his knife. Underneath, she wore a simple linen tunic that was soaked through with blood. Nathan tried to be respectful as he peeled it away from her wounds, focusing on the injuries rather than the person. The gashes were deep, inflicted by weapons rather than claws. Someone had attacked her with swords or axes, and recently. The wounds were still bleeding sluggishly, the edges ragged. Nathan worked methodically, cleaning each cut with the whiskey-soaked cloth and stitching them closed with hands that only shook a little. The orc woman remained unconscious throughout, though she whimpered occasionally when he pulled the thread through particularly tender flesh. By the time he finished bandaging her ribs and shoulder, the sun was high in the sky. Nathan sat back on his heels, exhausted and covered in blood that was not his own. The orc woman's breathing had evened out, becoming deeper and more regular. The color was returning to her skin, less gray and more of that vibrant green he associated with spring leaves. He should have been afraid. His neighbors would call him insane for bringing an orc into his home. But looking at her face, relaxed in unconsciousness, He saw only someone who had been hurt and needed kindness. Nathan cleaned his hands and went to make broth, knowing she would need food when she woke. She slept for 2 full days. Nathan checked on her regularly, changing bandages and dripping water between her lips when she seemed restless. He slept on the floor beside the bed, unwilling to leave her alone for long. On the morning of the 3rd day, he woke to find amber eyes watching him with wary intelligence. "You are awake," Nathan said, sitting up quickly. "How do you feel?" The orc woman stared at him for a long moment, and he wondered again if she understood his language. Then she spoke, her voice rough from disuse but the words clear. "Why did you help me? You were hurt," Nathan said simply. "I could not leave you to die in my field." "I am orc," she said, as if this explained everything. Perhaps it did. "You are also a person," Nathan replied. "Are you hungry? I have broth and bread." She continued watching him, suspicion clear in her expression, but after a moment she nodded. Nathan helped her sit up carefully, propping pillows behind her back. She hissed in pain but did not cry out, and he saw her jaw clench with determination. He brought the bowl of broth he had kept simmering on the fire and sat beside the bed. "Can you hold it yourself?" he asked. She reached for the bowl, but her hands were shaking too badly to grip it properly. Nathan saw frustration flash across her face before she reluctantly let him help. He held the bowl while she drank, trying to give her as much dignity as the situation allowed. When she finished the broth, he tore off a piece of bread and offered it to her. "What is your name?" Nathan asked as she chewed slowly. "Rasha," she said after swallowing. "Rasha Darkspear." "I am Nathan Grayson. This is my farm." Rasha nodded slowly, her eyes moving around the small room. "Where is your clan? Your family?" "Gone," Nathan said quietly. "My parents died years ago. I have cousins in the settlements to the south, but I prefer the quiet out here." "You live alone?" Rasha seemed surprised by this. "Most of the time. Sometimes traders come through, but not often. We are quite far from the main roads." Nathan stood to refill the bowl. "What happened to you? Who hurt you?" Rasha's expression darkened. "My own people. I was cast out for showing mercy to human children. Some of my former clanmates decided I should not be allowed to leave with my life." Nathan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "They tried to kill you for being kind. Weakness, they called it. Betrayal of orcish ways." Rasha's voice was bitter. "I have nowhere to go now. No clan will take one who has been exiled." "Then stay here," Nathan said before he could think better of it. "At least until you have healed. You are safe here." Rasha looked at him as if he had grown a second head. "You would shelter an orc, risk your standing with your own people." "What standing?" Nathan laughed without humor. "I am a farmer who lives alone on the frontier. I have no standing to risk, and you need time to recover." For the first time, Rasha's expression softened slightly. "You are very strange, Nathan Grayson." "So I have been told," he replied with a small smile. Over the following weeks, Rasha slowly regained her strength. Nathan tended her wounds with careful attention, changing bandages and making sure infection did not set in. He cooked simple meals of bread, cheese, vegetables from his garden, and occasionally rabbit or chicken. Rasha ate everything he brought her without complaint, though he noticed she seemed to particularly enjoy the meat dishes. As she grew stronger, they began to talk more. Nathan learned that orcs had complex clan structures with rigid rules of honor and strength. Rasha had been a warrior, trained from childhood to fight and defend her people. She spoke of her mother with respect and her father with something approaching fear. The concept of mercy was not valued in orcish society, she explained. Strength was everything, and showing kindness to enemies was seen as dangerous softness. Nathan told her about his parents, who had been gentle people despite the harsh frontier life. His mother had taught him to read from the few books they owned, and his father had shown him how to coax life from difficult soil. They had died within a year of each other when Nathan was 17, leaving him alone but not unprepared. "You not want a wife?" Rasha asked one afternoon as Nathan helped her take her first steps around the room. "Children. Human families are important, yes. Someday, perhaps," Nathan said, steadying her when she stumbled. "But there are not many unmarried women out here, and I have no desire to move to a settlement. I am content as I am." Rasha made a thoughtful sound but said nothing more on the subject. By the start of the 4th week, Rasha could walk around the house without assistance, though her movements were still careful and measured. She insisted on helping with small tasks despite Nathan's protests, peeling vegetables or mending his worn shirts with surprising skill. Her hands, so large and strong, worked the needle with delicate precision. "You do not have to work," Nathan said, watching her repair a tear in his work shirt. "You are still healing." "I cannot simply sit and do nothing," Rasha replied without looking up. "You have given me shelter and food. I must repay this somehow." "You owe me nothing," Nathan insisted. Rasha's hands stilled and she finally met his eyes. "Among my people, debts of life are sacred." "You saved my life, Nathan Grayson. That is not a small thing." "I did what anyone should do," he said, feeling uncomfortable with her intensity. "But anyone would not," Rasha said softly. "Most humans would have killed me or left me to die. You are different." Nathan did not know what to say to that, so he simply returned to preparing their evening meal. But he felt the weight of her gaze on him and found it did not bother him as much as perhaps it should. As summer deepened into long, hot days, Rasha grew strong enough to help with the farm work. Nathan protested at first, worried about her injuries, but she insisted and proved herself capable. She was far stronger than him, able to lift and carry loads that would have required him to make multiple trips. Together they harvested the wheat, repaired the chicken coop, and tended the vegetable garden. Nathan found himself enjoying her company more than he had expected. Rasha had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard, and she was surprisingly curious about human customs. She asked endless questions about his books, the few he owned, and seemed fascinated when he offered to teach her to read the human script. They fell into an easy routine. Nathan would wake early and make breakfast while Rasha checked on the animals. They would work together through the morning heat, breaking for a simple lunch before returning to whatever tasks needed attention. Evenings were spent inside, where Nathan would read aloud or Rasha would tell stories of orc legends, tales of great warriors and ancient battles. Nathan tried not to think about what would happen when she was fully healed and chose to leave. The house would feel too quiet without her presence. He had grown accustomed to having someone to talk to share meals with, to simply exist alongside. These were dangerous thoughts, he knew. She was orc and he was human, and their worlds were not meant to intersect beyond violence. But in the golden light of late summer, working side by side in the fields, it was easy to forget such divisions. One evening in early autumn, as they sat outside watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Rasha spoke suddenly. "I should leave soon." Nathan felt his chest tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "Where will you go?" "I do not know," she admitted. "Away from orc lands. Perhaps further into the frontier where no one knows what I am." "You could stay here," Nathan said quietly. Rasha turned to look at him, surprise clear on her face. "Nathan, I cannot stay forever, you know this." "Why not?" The words came out more forcefully than he intended. "You are happy here, are you not? And he stopped, unsure how to finish that thought. "You what?" Rasha asked, her voice gentle. Nathan took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "I have been alone for 5 years. I thought I preferred it that way." But having you here, it has made me realize how much I missed having someone. Not just anyone, you specifically. I would miss you if you left." Rasha was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I would miss you as well, more than I should." "Then stay," Nathan said, turning to face her fully. "Stay here, work the farm with me, build a life here." "Your neighbors," Rasha began. "I have no neighbors for miles," Nathan interrupted. "And those who do eventually see you will have to accept it or stay away. This is my land, my choice." Rasha reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed her large hand over his smaller one. Her skin was warm and rough with calluses. "You would truly do this? Accept an orc into your life permanently?" "You are not just an orc to me," Nathan said, feeling brave enough to lace his fingers through hers. "You are Rasha. You are my friend, and perhaps if you wanted you could be more than that." Her amber eyes widened. "Nathan, you cannot mean I care for you," he said simply. "Not despite what you are, but because of who you are. Your strength, your humor, your kindness even after your own people cast you out. I care for you, Rasha Darkspear, and I do not want you to leave." Rasha's other hand came up to cup his cheek, her touch impossibly gentle for someone so strong. "I care for you as well, so much that it frightens me. I have never felt this way about anyone, and I do not know what to do with these feelings." "We will figure it out together," Nathan said, leaning into her touch. "If you want to." "I want to," Rasha said, and then she was leaning down and Nathan was reaching up, and their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home. They pulled apart slowly, both breathing harder. Rasha laughed, the sound surprised and delighted. "This is madness. We are madness." "Perhaps," Nathan agreed, smiling up at her. "But it is a madness I choose willingly." They spent the autumn preparing for winter, but now there was a new awareness between them. Touches lingered longer, glances held deeper meaning. They moved around each other with the ease of partners rather than housemates. Nathan found himself constantly aware of Rasha's presence, drawn to her like iron to a lodestone. One night in late October, as the first frost touched the ground, Nathan woke to the sound of horses and shouting. He sat up quickly, heart racing, and saw Rasha already awake and alert beside him. They had been sharing the bed for 2 weeks now, finding comfort in each other's warmth as the nights grew colder. "Stay here," Rasha said, rising and reaching for the hunting bow Nathan kept by the door. "Absolutely not," Nathan replied, pulling on his boots. "This is my home. We face whatever this is together." Rasha looked like she wanted to argue, but the shouting grew louder and there was no time. They moved to the window together and peered out into the darkness. Torchlight flickered near the tree line, and Nathan counted at least 8 figures on horseback. Humans, from what he could see, though their faces were hidden in shadow. "Grayson," a voice called out. "We know you are harboring an orc. Send it out and we will leave peacefully." Nathan felt Rasha tense beside him. "You should send me out," she whispered. "I will lead them away from here." "No," Nathan said firmly. "You are not going anywhere." He opened the door and stepped out onto the small porch, Rasha close behind him despite his gesture for her to stay back. The torchlight revealed familiar faces, men from the settlement 10 miles south. Nathan recognized Marcus, the blacksmith's son, and several others he had traded with over the years. "What is the meaning of this?" Nathan called out, proud that his voice did not shake. "You have been seen with an orc," Marcus said, walking his horse closer. "Living with her like she is people. It is an abomination, Grayson." "She is people," Nathan replied coldly. "And what I do on my own land is my concern, not yours." "She is a monster," another man shouted. "Orcs killed my brother last spring. They cannot be trusted." Rasha stepped forward and Nathan heard several men reach for their weapons. She held up her hands, showing she was unarmed. I am sorry for your loss, but I did not kill your brother. I have killed no humans. I have only tried to live peacefully. Lies, someone yelled. Orcs do not know peace. She has done nothing to you, Nathan said loudly, moving to stand beside Rasha. She has lived here for months now, working my farm and causing no harm to anyone. If you have a problem with that, you have a problem with me. Marcus shook his head slowly. You are choosing an orc over your own kind, Grayson. That is betrayal. I am choosing someone I care about over mindless prejudice, Nathan countered. There is no betrayal in that. Then you leave us no choice, Marcus said, and the sadness in his voice chilled Nathan more than any threat. If you will not send her away, we must remove the threat ourselves. The men began to dismount, weapons drawn. Nathan felt Rasha shift beside him, her body coiling like a spring ready to release. He knew she could fight, had seen the scars that proved her warrior training, but she was outnumbered and still not fully healed. Run, Rasha whispered to him. When I attack, you run and hide. I am not leaving you, Nathan hissed back. Before Rasha could argue, an arrow whistled through the air and embedded itself in the wooden post beside Nathan's head. Everyone froze. The shot had not come from the men in front of the house, but from somewhere in the darkness behind them. That was a warning. A woman's voice called out, strong and commanding. The next one goes through someone's throat. More figures emerged from the shadows, and Nathan's eyes widened as he realized they were orcs. 6 of them, all armed, all moving with the fluid grace of trained warriors. They formed a loose circle around Marcus and his men, arrows nocked and swords drawn. The lead orc, a woman even taller than Rasha with a jagged scar across her face, stepped forward into the torchlight. You threaten my sister. This is unwise. Sister, Nathan whispered to Rasha. Rekka, Rasha breathed, and Nathan heard the shock in her voice. You came. Of course I came, Rekka said, not taking her eyes off the human men. Did you think I would let them kill you without consequence? You are blood, Rasha. Exile does not change that. Marcus looked between the orcs and Nathan's house, clearly calculating odds he did not like. This is human land. You have no authority here. And yet here we are, Rekka replied with a cold smile. Matching your 8 with our 6, shall we see who is the better fighter? I promise you it will not be you. We do not want bloodshed, Nathan said quickly, stepping forward. Please, all of you, there is no need for violence. They came to kill you, Rekka pointed out. They came because they are afraid, Nathan replied. Fear makes people do terrible things. But more killing will only create more fear and more violence. It has to stop somewhere. Listen to the human, Marcus said mockingly, preaching peace while hiding behind orc warriors. I am not hiding, Nathan said firmly. I am trying to prevent unnecessary death. Yours included, Marcus. Go home. Tell the others that Rasha is no threat. She has lived beside you for months without incident. That should be proof enough. Once you let one monster go, more will come, another man argued. Rasha stepped forward then, her voice ringing clear in the cold night air. I am no monster. I am someone who wanted peace and was cast out by her own kind for it. Nathan Grayson showed me kindness when I had nothing. He healed my wounds and gave me shelter. He treated me with more humanity than most humans would show their own neighbors. If that makes him a traitor in your eyes, then your eyes see poorly. Silence fell over the gathered crowd. Nathan saw some of the men shifting uncomfortably, unwilling to meet Rasha's gaze. I will make you a bargain, Nathan said into the quiet. Leave us in peace. If within 1 year there are any raids or attacks on the settlement that can be traced to us or to Rasha's presence here, you may return and do as you will. But if we live quietly and harm no one, you will leave us alone. Is that not fair? Marcus considered this for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. 1 year. But if even one orc attacks because they have heard of your arrangement, we will burn this place to the ground." "Agreed," Nathan said, though he saw Rasha's jaw tighten in anger. The men mounted their horses again, casting wary glances at the orc warriors still surrounding them. They rode away slowly, torches disappearing into the darkness. Nathan did not relax until the last light had vanished from sight. Rekka lowered her bow and turned to Rasha, a complicated expression on her scarred face. "Sister, you look well." "Better than when last you saw me," Rasha replied. "What are you doing here, Rekka? You could be exiled yourself for helping me." "I already was," Rekka said with a shrug. "When I spoke against the decision to kill you. So I gathered others who felt the same. We have been watching over you from a distance, making sure you were truly safe." Rasha's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You sacrificed your place in the clan for me. You are my sister," Rekka said simply. "Besides, the clan grows too rigid, too unwilling to change. Perhaps it is time for a new way. We have been discussing forming our own group, orcs who choose peace over constant warfare." "Where would you go?" Nathan asked. Rekka looked at him thoughtfully. "That is not yet decided. But I wanted to make sure Rasha was well cared for first. I see that she is." There was approval in her voice as she looked between Rasha and Nathan. "Stay," Nathan offered impulsively. "Not permanently, perhaps, but for a few days at least. Rest here." "It is the least I can offer after you helped save our lives." Rekka raised an eyebrow. "You would host 7 orcs. You are either very brave or very foolish, Nathan Grayson." "I have been called both," Nathan said with a slight smile. "There is space in the barn and I can provide food. Please." "I would like to thank you properly." The orcs agreed to stay for 3 days. Nathan found himself hosting an unlikely gathering, cooking large meals and listening to stories shared around his fire. The warriors were wary at first, clearly uncomfortable with accepting human hospitality. But Nathan's genuine kindness and Rasha's obvious happiness gradually won them over. He watched Rasha reunite with her sister, seeing the bond between them strengthen despite the months of separation. Rekka told stories of their childhood, tales that made Rasha laugh and sometimes wipe away tears. Nathan committed every detail to memory, grateful for this glimpse into the life she had lived before coming to him. On the final night before the orcs planned to leave, Rekka pulled Nathan aside. "You care for my sister deeply, this is clear." "I do," Nathan admitted. "I love her." Rekka studied him with sharp eyes. "Love is not enough if you cannot protect her. Those men will return, bargain or no bargain. Fear is a poison that spreads." "Then we will face it together," Nathan said. "I will not abandon Rasha. Whatever comes, we face it side by side." "Good," Rekka said with a nod of approval. "She deserves someone who stands beside her, not behind or in front." She paused, then added in a softer voice, "Our mother would have liked you. She always said strength came in many forms." The orcs left the next morning, but Rekka promised to return in the spring. "We will settle somewhere in the frontier," she explained to Rasha. "Far from both orc and human lands, at least at first. You will always have family if you need them." Rasha embraced her sister tightly, whispering something in the orcish tongue that made Rekka smile. Then the warriors were gone, disappearing into the forest like shadows. Winter came in earnest after that, blanketing the farm in snow and forcing Nathan and Rasha to spend long hours indoors. They read together, practiced letters and words, and talked about everything and nothing. Nathan taught Rasha to play chess with a set his father had carved, and she taught him orcish battle songs that were surprisingly beautiful despite their violent lyrics. On the longest night of winter, as they sat before the fire wrapped in blankets, Nathan took Rasha's hand in his. "I have been thinking," he began carefully. "That is always dangerous," Rasha teased gently. Nathan smiled but pressed on. When spring comes, I would like to formally declare my intentions. Among my people there is a ceremony, a promise between two people who wish to share their lives. Rasha went very still. You mean marriage? Yes, Nathan said. I know it is complicated. I know there may be no priest who would agree to perform the ceremony, but the promise itself, that is what matters. I want to promise myself to you, Rasha, if you will have me. Rasha's eyes were bright with emotion. Among orcs, such bonds are sealed with blood and witnessed by the clan. I have no clan anymore. Then we will make our own traditions, Nathan said. We will create something new just for us. Yes, Rasha whispered, then louder. Yes, Nathan Grayson, I will bind my life to yours. They kissed then, deep and long, and Nathan felt something settle in his chest. A rightness, a certainty that this was exactly where he was meant to be and who he was meant to be with. Spring arrived with birdsong and melting snow. True to his word, Nathan prepared a ceremony of their own making. They stood together in the wheat field where he had first found her, the place where their strange journey had begun. Nathan spoke words of devotion in the human tongue, promising to stand beside Rasha in hardship and joy, in danger and peace. Rasha responded in Orcish, her voice strong and clear as she vowed to protect him, to honor him, to love him until her last breath. They exchanged simple rings. Nathan had forged himself with ore from his own land, circles of iron that felt more precious than gold. There was no priest to witness them, no congregation to cheer, only the wind through the wheat and the sun on their faces. It was perfect. As promised, Repay returned in early spring with her group of exiles. They had found land deeper in the frontier, she explained, and were beginning to build a settlement. Any who wish for peace over war are welcome, she said, orc, human, or otherwise. That is a bold dream, Nathan said. So is an orc and a human building a life together, Repay replied with a knowing look at the iron rings both he and Rasha now wore. You are an inspiration to us all, brother. Brother. The word filled Nathan with warmth. He had been alone for so long, and now he had not only a wife but family as well. The year passed without incident. No raids came from orcs, and the settlement to the south left them alone as promised. Nathan and Rasha worked their farm, expanding the fields and adding more chickens to their growing flock. Occasionally, travelers would pass through and spread word of the strange household, the human and orc living in harmony. Some spoke of it with disapproval, but others were curious. By the time the second year began, they had received visits from other mixed couples, orcs and humans who had fallen in love despite the prejudice, and were seeking a place to exist peacefully. Nathan and Rasha welcomed them, shared their story, and sent them on to Repay's settlement if they wished to be part of something larger. One warm summer evening, 2 years after Nathan had found Rasha in his field, they sat together on their porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight. Rasha's hand rested on her stomach, where new life was just beginning to grow. They had been uncertain it was even possible, orc and human creating something together, but nature had found a way. I never forgot that meal, you know, Rasha said quietly. The first one you gave me. The broth and bread. I was so weak, so certain I would die, and you gave me sustenance, you gave me hope. It was just food, Nathan said, though he covered her hand with his own. It was more than that, Rasha insisted. It was the first kindness I had been shown in so long. I promised myself then, if I lived, I would repay you. I would give you my life in return. You have given me so much more than that, Nathan said softly. You have given me love, partnership, family. You have given me a future I never imagined possible. Rasha turned to him, her amber eyes glowing in the fading light. You saved me in that field, Nathan Grayson, but every day after we have saved each other." Nathan leaned in to kiss her, sweet and slow, tasting the truth of her words. They had found each other against all odds, had built something beautiful from kindness and trust. The world beyond their farm was still dangerous, still full of prejudice and fear. But here, in this small pocket of peace they had carved out together, there was only love. As night fell completely and stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Nathan and Rasha remained on the porch, holding each other close. They spoke of plans for the coming child, wondering if it would have his eyes or her strength. They talked about expanding the farm, perhaps building a second house for when Rekka's people visited. They dreamed aloud of a future where human and orc could live side by side without fear. It was a beautiful dream, fragile and uncertain as all dreams are. But it was theirs, built on the foundation of a single act of kindness in a wheat field 3 years ago. Nathan had given a dying orc woman a simple meal, expecting nothing in return. She had repaid him with her life, her love, and her unwavering presence. Together, they had created something neither could have imagined alone. In the farmhouse behind them, the fire burned warm and welcoming. The bed they shared was neat and comfortable. The shelves held books they read together on quiet evenings. Every corner of the small home held evidence of their shared life, the blending of two worlds that should have remained forever separate. But love, Nathan had learned, cared nothing for the boundaries others tried to draw. Love saw only the person, not the species. Love was patient and kind and willing to fight for what mattered. And what mattered was the woman beside him, the life growing within her, and the future they would build together one day at a time. "I love you," Nathan whispered into the darkness. "And I love you," Rasha replied, her hand squeezing his. "Always." The fireflies continued their dance, little sparks of light in the summer night, and in that moment everything was exactly as it should be.